Today, I'm going to give you a brief explanation on comma rules. If you're able to master the comma rules in the ways that I'm explaining in this video, it's really going to help you increase your TOEFL writing score, but also make sure that you're not making simple mistakes that could affect your score. So let's get started. First of all, there are a few things that you do need to know before we get started, a few vocabulary terms. The first you may have heard before is an independent clause. Now, sometimes we refer to this also as a complete sentence. Now, with an independent clause, you must have a subject and a verb. That's crucial. You have to have both them there. I have an example here. She ran. Of course, we have our subject in she and our verb in ran. It can also be more complex sentences like he went to the store once school was finished. So you can see there's a subject, there's a verb, and there's also some additional here. So another way you can understand if something is an independent clause is that it can be understood completely on its own. So you don't need any more information when you're dealing with an independent clause. On the opposite side of things, we have dependent clause, which is either missing a subject or a verb. One of these is missing. I have the example down here. Went away, so we're missing the subject, or she beautiful. We're missing the verb there. The more complicated kind of dependent clause aspect, though, is that it cannot be understood on its own due to a subordinator. Now, you may have studied subordinating conjunctions. A subordinator is just a simplified word for that. I put some examples here so you can understand more clearly. Although is the subordinating conjunction, I was tired. That tells us that there's some other information that we're missing, that the sentence is not complete. Even though there is a subject and there is a verb, it's a dependent clause. Here's another example. Since she was young. Since is a subordinating conjunction. Yes, there's a subject. Yes, there's a verb. But we don't know what's coming after that. Therefore, it makes it a dependent clause. Now, a dependent clause is also sometimes referred to as an incomplete sentence. Something to remember. And you might also see it called a sentence fragment. These are a bit more complicated, so we're not going to go over those today. But if you do see these terms, you know that it's a dependent clause. Now, you also need to know your coordinating conjunctions. Remember, I did talk about, here, we did talk about subordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions are a little different, and they can be defined by fanboys here. So they are used to connect two independent clauses, phrases, words. We use these in a variety of ways. However, if you remember fanboys, you remember this acronym, you'll never forget your coordinating conjunctions. We have for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Today we're going to talk about these in the way that they combined independent clauses. So remember fanboys, you'll remember your coordinating conjunctions. Now, the last thing we need to talk about is introductory phrase. So an introductory phrase is a type of dependent clause or phrase. We use these words almost interchangeably, that provide background information. So this comes in handy with your TOEFL writing to show some complex and compound sentences. It usually begins with the subordinating conjunction or an adverbial. So I've put some examples here to make it clear. Because she went to school, if you study, since she moved. Very similar to that dependent clause, right? We need that more information similar to this idea here. So now that we have all those terms, it's time to get into what we're really here for. Now, if you're watching this video, this would be a great time to take a screenshot, take a picture. These are the sentence comma rules. If you remember this table, you won't make any mistakes when it comes to your commas in your sentences. Now let's go over the correct column first. So, yes, of course, you can combine two independent clauses with a period. Probably the most common way, not the most sophisticated way to put sentences together, but it's good to know. Next, we're getting down here to commas. So you can combine two independent clauses, but you must have a comma and then one of the fanboys. If you omit the comma or omit the fanboys, that is incorrect grammar, so you must have both. The next one is you can have a dependent clause, usually an introductory phrase, comma, and then an independent clause. Again, if the dependent clause comes first, you must have a comma right after it, and then an independent clause. And the last one is you can have the independent clause come first, a subordinator, and then a dependent clause. Notice there's no comma when you do it in this order. Make sure to take note of that. On the incorrect side here, of course, you cannot put two independent clauses together without any punctuation. You cannot put two independent clauses together with just a comma. And you can't put an independent clause with a comma and then a dependent clause. Remember, that takes us to here. You have to have a subordinator and you don't use a comma. So this is really what you need to know about the sentence comma rules. Memorize this, study this, and your TOEFL score will really improve. Lastly, just one more thing before we wrap this up. Listing comma rules. You always put a comma between words and phrases while listing in a sentence. So here's my examples. I eat apples, comma, pears, comma, bananas, and blueberries. Notice how there's no comma here. There's actually a term for that. It's called the Oxford comma. In American English, we do not use the Oxford comma. In UK English or England English, we would use that, but we don't use it in America. Now, also, it's not just for listing words, but sometimes it's for listing verbs as well, kind of used here. I need to go shopping, eat dinner, and take a shower. So again, we have a comma in between go shopping and eat dinner, but we don't have a comma here, that Oxford comma. We omit that. So this will help you to make sure that you're listing your commas correctly. Just remember, comma in between the words or the phrases, but no comma before and. And always comes at the end. Don't put an and here or here. I've seen many students do this. It's incorrect, so you really want to be careful about doing that because it shows that you don't really understand. So here are our comma rules. Like I said, this slide here is going to really give you all the information you need. Memorize this, memorize these terms here: introductory phrase, coordinating conjunction, dependent clause, and independent clause. If you remember those things, you will understand how to do your comma rules, and your TOEFL writing score will benefit from that.